Well, good morning, morena, everybody. Lovely to see you all this morning. Welcome to our Strategic Planning and Policy Committee meeting, called specifically to deal with our Ahuaki deliberations. Lovely to see you all bright and early after a wonderfully relaxing, hopefully, weekend for you all. Before we launch into our agenda, could I call on you, Bill, to open us with a karakia, please?
Oh, sorry. I have such a loud voice. I don't normally need a microphone. I just wanted to acknowledge we had the commemoration of Rangi Awhia on Friday, and thank you, Susan and John, for coming out, and Claire. And anybody else that I might have missed, because it was pretty dark first thing in the morning there when you're trying to get around. And thanks to the Events Fund for assisting Ngāti Apakura and Ngāti Hinatu in putting on that commemoration each year. And it's great to see the kura in the schools that turn up and look at our local history in that regard. So kia ora koutou.
Kia ora, Bill. It's always a wonderful morning, and yes, it's funny, you arrive in the dark and you're never really sure who's there until the sun rises. It was a lovely sense of optimism and positive vibe this year, so it's wonderful. Thank you, Bill. Right, moving on to our agenda, people. Apologies, I have one from Dale Marie this morning. She conveyed her satisfaction with the paper as it stands. So can I have somebody moving that and seconding the acceptance of those apologies? Bill and then Claire, I'll move that they be accepted. Aye, say aye. Against? Carried. Fantastic. Disclosure of members' interests. Are there any people wish to declare at this point? No, don't think there would be. Fantastic. Moving on then to the substantive item that we're here for today. I shall pass over to Kirsty and Vanessa, and we'll leave it for you to introduce, obviously, Ben Petch, who's probably, well, shouldn't be any stranger to any of you, but I shall hand it over to you. Obviously, this is has been a long time coming, not quite there yet, but this is a critical day in terms of the deliberations for this huge body of work. So I shall pass over to you, Kirsty and team.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'd just like to acknowledge that today will very much be a team effort. Vanessa will be leading this item in her role as project manager, supported by Ben and myself, Ben in his role as project director and me as project owner. Tēnā koutou katoa, ka huri toku whakaro ki a mātua Harold Maniapoto me tāna wehinga atu. Nāna hoki a Ahuaki I whanake, I aki, I ārahi, tainoa akira, kina mahi maha, kua tutuki, ia, I ono wā, I koru, haere, uki, atura. My thoughts turn to Mātua Harold Maniapoto, who helped us to develop, encourage and guide Ahuaki, and indeed acknowledging the many undertakings that he achieved in his time. Koru, I bid you farewell in your rest. Thank you. Now I'd like to hand over to Vanessa. Thank you.
Morena, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. Might not have a choice most of them. Before I dive into the discussion of a deliberation, I thought we would need a bit of a recap on where we are at actually in the process. Ahuaki Waipa Community Special Plan has been in development for just around 4 years now. It has gone through substantive engagement, initially with Mana Whenua and iwi partners back in 2021, when we were developing the technical narratives, the foundation work on Ahuaki. Then with stakeholders, looking at developing the scenarios, the possible future scenarios for Waipa, and this was in 2022. And then in 2023, when we went through an extensive engagement period with a wider community, initially in the first few months during the roadshow, and thereafter in the later month of the year with the Word Cafe. So I think it's a good time for me to thank you all personally as elected members for your involvement and for the ones who have also been involved in the project control group for involvement and support throughout the last 3 or 4 years of developing this plan and leading to the discussion today. We will be looking, sorry, at the outcomes and findings of the last scheduled engagement we have taken on the plan for this first iteration of a plan. As we consulted over a 4 weeks period during the 4th of October, between the 4th of October and the 4th of November last year. We received 138 submissions coming from 66 submitters, of which 24 were heard during the hearings on the 27th of November. To support the deliberation discussions today, you have been provided with a suite of documents and appendices, including the full schedule of submissions that were received on the 27th of November. This is on Appendix 6 of a report. And a set of documents outlining the feedback, a summary of the submission received for each implementation packages, sorry, the staff comments, staff recommendation, and the draft amendment. Okay. Passing on to you to do a bit of a scene setting.
Thank you, Vanessa. So before we head into the analysis and recommendations, I'd just like to provide some, I guess, key points for you to consider. We've developed Ahuaki to provide a district-wide spatial plan for Waipa, and one of the key reasons for doing so is to ensure that we successfully deliver on our vision to build connected communities and our community outcomes, which are prefaced on the 4 well-beings. Both people and place are at the very heart of Ahuaki. As a 30-year plus strategy, it will become our key strategic planning document, and it will drive all of our future planning, prioritisation, investment, service and project delivery. It's not a regulatory requirement that we have a spatial plan. It's something that we've chosen to do, and we've taken a community-led approach in developing Ahuaki. This plan is shaped by the community, for the community. And as Vanessa mentioned, we've undertaken extensive engagement with our mana whenua and iwi partners, key stakeholders and the wider community over the last 4+ years. This includes the extensive informal community engagement in 2023 and a formal consultation process in 2024, which focused on community feedback to the draft implementation plan. We've introduced new and innovative approaches to how we partner with mana whenua and iwi through the PCG representation and through partner workshops. The way that we assessed possible future scenarios using story maps with our key stakeholders, and how we engaged with the community, partnering with the University of Waikato to lead a World Cafe process with community members representing the demographics of Waipa in 2050. We want to acknowledge that this first iteration of Ahuaki was always going to have some limits. We were clear about that at the commencement of this project. This is very much a starting point. The intent was that Ahuaki will build upon the spatial planning work that's been undertaken at a sub-regional level, and it will strengthen what we've already been doing in a way that ensures that we're both effective and efficient. As it's implemented and operationalised, Ahuaki will underpin the long-term planning process. It will help to ensure alignment across our activity areas and across our work programs. We're already now seeing the outcomes of Ahuaki. It provided an important pre-engagement step and informed the development of the economic wellbeing strategy, which was workshopped with you on the 12th of February. It will drive future strategy development, and it will also help to guide the implementation of the Anchor Institution framework, which is focused on how we deliver our services, projects and initiatives to enhance the wellbeing of our Waipa communities. The development of Ahuaki isn't happening in isolation. It's informed by and it's part of a network of sequential and interlinked pieces of work. Therefore, we need to be mindful of the broader landscape and of the wording that we use. Examples include the future-proof spatial studies, roads of national significance, fast-track applications, regional deals, local water done well legislation and policy direction, all of which influence how we respond to submissions, make amendments, and give effect to this final revision of the draft Community Spatial Plan and Implementation Plan. And we respectfully request that you consider this when we work through the recommendations today. I'd also like to note that as a continuation of the work that has been undertaken in developing Ahuaki, we're supporting Vanessa in a part-time role as the planning lead for the future-proof Waipa North Hamilton South spatial study that's to be completed this year. This will help us in the delivery of our own growth work program, but it will also help us to strongly influence and ensure alignment at local, sub-regional, regional and inter-regional levels. It will help us to champion Waipa, to build on the work that's been undertaken in developing Ahuaki and strengthening existing relationships with partners, key stakeholders and the wider community. It will benefit all of our future-proof partners. With regard to timing, you'll recall that originally deliberations were scheduled for the 16th of December and these were postponed to enable us to review and better understand some of the complex submissions that were made during the hearing in November. This allowed for a comprehensive analysis of all submissions, a collaborative approach to the preparation of responses and the recommendations being made today. And by way of example, with Mayor Susan, we were able to meet with external parties in January to determine the best way to address submissions and make recommendations on one of the more complex matters. It's acknowledged that in the revised documentation, there are some typos. Despite best efforts, there are some wording typos and some number errors, but included in Part F of the recommendation before you today is a delegation of authority to me to make minor editorial changes, and those typos will be addressed in accordance with that delegation of authority. Thank you. I'm now going to hand over to my friend and colleague to lead through the analysis of submissions and recommendations.
Thank you, Kirsty. Get to lead a French person to do those typos. My apologies in advance. Thanks, Kirsty. Now we are going to turn into the feedback that we have received. As you know, while the consultation was directed towards the draft spatial plan and the draft implementation plan, the consultation questions were really focusing on the implementation power and packages. And this is because of the extensive engagement that had been carried, obviously, initially and for the last couple of years on the development of the draft plan itself. The consultation questions sought responses on the implementation packages, the implementation activities, and their fit for purposeness to achieve the spatial plan goals, the strategic opportunities, but also on the stage approach, so the time frame that we schedule actually for this activity to be delivered. The submitters indicated their support, their opposition, or a feeling of being unsure on those activity and stage approach. And submitters were also invited to provide further comments on their sentiments. As I mentioned earlier, we received 138 submissions in total from 66 unique submitters. That is 30 of our stakeholders, including community groups and key agencies, 29 individuals, 5 submissions came from our Manawhenua and iwi partners, and 2 from our council community boards. Due to the interrelated topics within the document and within the consultation itself, many submissions contain feedback on more than one topics. especially when they were submitted only on one type of packages. So we had to carefully analyze, obviously, those submissions, and we have split them into submission points. And while there is always a level of subjectivity, we have done our best to present a clear and detailed assessment in this report. This led to over 360 submission points related to the implementation package first and foremost, and also to the strategy. And those two documents cannot actually be divorced from one another. The analysis showed that 61% of our submitters supported the implementation activities, 22% were opposed, and 17% were unsure. On the stage approach, 33% supported it, 41% were opposed, and 26% were unsure. So this is showing that overall, we can be comfortable in the support of those implementation activities to achieve the goals of the spatial plan. But there is obviously a more level of position when it comes about the schedule. Submitters were happy with what we were proposing. They just wanted to see it happen faster. Yeah. I'm just going to pause there for a minute just to see if there is any question at this stage. But moving on to the appendix and the recommendations.
Any questions from
Thanks.
anybody? Don't
No.
believe so.
Happy, thank you. Now moving on to the appendix. With the consultation question focusing on the implementation plan, this is the main reason that this document is actually at the forefront of the analysis, and not the other way around. We would have actually put the draft plan first normally and then the implementation plan, but the analysis was really on the implementation packages. So starting with Appendix 1, which is on page 26 of the agenda, and I don't know if you want to reference due diligence.
So it's at tab 4.1, pages 26 to 63.
Yeah. And so if you're okay to share the screen. The Appendix 1 has been actually split into the different implementation packages and is provided tables per answer to both questions. Question 1 being regarding the level of support towards the implementation activities. Question 2 being on the stage approach itself, the level of support as well. If you want to drag just a little bit to show how the first table. Yeah, thank you. With 2 sections per table. Section A providing a summary of the analysis with a list of the submissions, and section B, which is what we are going to focus on today, which looks at the recommendation. So in this section, you found actually the staff comments, the staff recommendation, and the draft amendment, which have been placed into the revised implementation plan and revised draft plan. So moving on to, a quick note, actually. As an overview, the recommendation are not proposing any fundamental changes to the plan. But I have outlined 3 key discussion points through the document. And that is really for us to probably slow the pace and take the time to actually discuss those 3 particular topics, okay? And I will outline them when we get to them. So we're going to start with future development and housing package, which was the initial one. The list of, bear with me, I'm just trying to find on my key point there. The list of activities under this package included FD1, the review of the growth strategy, FD2, the update to the housing strategy, FD3, which is the district plan update and concept plans, FD4, the review of the free water master plan, and then FD5, which is the development and implementation of the heritage assets master plan. Overall, a good level of support for this package, with 51% of in support for those activities, and 33% of not in support, and 60% of people being unsure. Sorry. When it comes about the stage approach, again, a good level of support, 20% with 45%, sorry, 20% of not in support, and 35% of being unsure. And that's really a reflection of the scheduling for those activities, which most of them being actually ongoing activities. Those activities those implementation activities are very much influenced by a change in demographics, population projection, but also the regulative and legislative landscape that they are operating in. And therefore, they need to be actually in a constant kind of review as well. Most submissions within this package really were focusing on those two first implementation activities, which were the housing strategy and the growth strategy. And with a particular criticism on the tangible outcomes and the measurable actions for those activities as well. And there were also a few submissions looking at prompting us to do more localized planning and to better respond to the change in land use and address future infrastructure needs. So in this package has raised 14 recommendations, including 11, which are seeking amendments to the draft implementation plan.
Vanessa, can I just interrupt for a minute there? Zoe, I wonder if we could put page 17 of our agenda actually on the screen, because if people are following online, it's probably more relevant to what the summaries that Vanessa's providing us with, rather than the detailed.
Might have to jump between.
Yeah, if we can go backwards and forwards, but I think that's a really good summary at page 17 of what you've just said, and I assume that you're going to jump backwards and forwards. If you want, I can let you know when it's, so those are helpful summaries, and obviously there's more granular information in respect of the appendices you've referred to, but if people are following online, that will probably make more sense at a higher level until we get into the more detailed discussion.
Thank you. So moving on to the recommendations, which are on page 32 of your agenda and 6 of the Appendix 1. The first recommendation looked at linking the Ahuaki Waipa Community Spatial Plan and implementation activities on that first package with the future-proof workstream program. And this is really to look at the submission who have addressed the gaps identified when it comes to more localized planning, especially in the north and within the north and the eastern side of the district. So in this recommendation, we wanted to prompt and add content to the growth strategy activity to complete to actually reference the future-proof implementation plan. So if we can actually go, sorry, Zoe, it's going to be a back and forth, but if we can go to page 33 of the agenda and look at the draft amendment. Thank you. Yeah. And this is each amendment are outlined in italics and in red. And as I said, this is to address the submissions who had requested for a little bit more linkage between the current work, which is occurring around, especially in response to some changes with the road of national significance and around the Southernings and the Cambridge to Pierere road projects. Yes.
Any feedback, anybody on those? That makes abundant sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
I'm
think this
pleased
is
it's been
probably what we're
adopted. It has
going
to
to do.
be.
Yeah, my apologies. Probably going to do one by one, each recommendation, look at them, discuss each proposed amendment and look at the wording and see if there is anything that needs to be done differently. Yeah, thank you.
Seems to have found favour. No real opposition there, so we can probably move on.
Moving on
Thanks, Vanessa.
to the second recommendation, which is addressing the submissions that we heard and most actually that we have heard during the hearing on the 27th of November last year for Ahuatke to have to be able to provide a little bit more commitment when it comes to the growth management aspect of this document. So what we're proposing here and what the recommendation intent is that for the next iteration of Ahuaki, we're proposing to actually integrate the work stream under the growth, the update of the growth strategy within the next iteration of Ahuaki. So as you know, right now, the growth strategy, the update to the WIPA 2050 growth strategy, which was developed in 2017, is really our tool to develop or provide for land supply within the district. This is the tool that we normally use to look at the expansion of growth cells, retention of growth cells, and also to kind of manage density within our towns and villages. The next iteration of Ahuaki, as we recommend in here, would be to integrate those two work programs together. Yeah. And again, the recommendation here and the draft amendment is really to provide some further guidance on the next iteration of the spatial plan.
Roger, comment.
Yeah, thanks. Through you, Susan. I think this draft amendment is extremely relevant, but I've just got a little thought in the back of my mind about, you know, when we look at, we're talking about provide greater certainty for infrastructure provision over time. And that challenge that we've already identified with Waikato Waters well done, and the intersection between, you know, our neighbouring council, where we're going to obviously have a challenge with that provision of infrastructure, or at least there's a question about how that's going to be implemented. And are we as specific as we can be within this to try and mitigate any challenges that we've got with the certainty of infrastructure, particularly in that area? Does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah. I'm just hearing, yeah, the comment.
All right.
Kirsty, did you want to elaborate more, perhaps more fully on that?
It's just to do the timing. So the next iteration of Ahuaki is indicatively scheduled to align with the third long-term plan. Okay, so we're looking at 5 to 6 years from today. By that time, I think we would have been well informed with the work happening under the future proof. Not only from a transport infrastructure, but from a water services infrastructure as well. By that time, you would expect that the new entity would have actually kind of advanced as well in providing some direction as to water services will be delivering, not only in Waipa, but at a sub-regional level. And that is why I think, you know, it would be untimely to provide this level of direction in this iteration here, because we do not have the level of informations which is currently being worked on by all those work programs. So we have future proof, we have the regional spatial strategy that Waikato Regional Council is initiating as well, and obviously the work which is currently under decision within the free water kind of services as well. I don't think we can really be more specific about what can happen. And again, I would be cautious on, and you will see that the recommendation have a really cautious wording around what we can do now in 2025 and what we will be able to do in the next iteration of Ahuaki. So it's really just under a word of caution, but I haven't tried to be as specific because we are really much revising this document in a fast changing kind of landscape where a lot of work being done and will ultimately impact, not only just influence, but actually impact on the way we deliver our growth management within the district. Yeah. So I suppose I hear that you're probably touching on the cautious wording that I'm using right now, but that has been actually done willingly and intentionally. Thank you, not willingly. Yes, sorry. Intentionally, because of the changing landscape that we are currently in, and that we would have done this a couple of years ago. The wording probably would have been different. But between the draft consultation, the draft being put forward for consultation, and when it was drafted, remember, it was actually September last year, and it went into consultation during October, November, and we're revising right now. So there's been quite a lot of moving pieces during the last 6 months already. Yeah.
Thanks, Vanessa. Lou?
Thank you. An interesting document, and I tend to agree with Councillor Gordon on some of this, but I do concur that we need to have a generalised discussion on this. We cannot be specific, okay? The thing is that we're looking at a regional strategic plan, which will be implemented at some time in the future. So we will have to integrate, and that's the whole thing with Ahuaki. We're going to have to integrate with that spatial plan at a regional level. So in doing that, we cannot be too specific because we'll have to actually be able to be mobile enough to actually integrate that. So that's why I totally concur with your more generalised language. So thank you.
Yeah, cool, Lou. Bill?
Kia ora. I just wanted to, because I see you've described this implementation of a heritage asset master plan, and I just wanted to get a bit of a look at that because I'm looking at the cultural perspectives of it, because heritage just is a path towards is a path towards the cultural components going forward. The cultural components of all of that heritage is all of us here now. So I did wonder, the cultural components of this and this description of it in terms of asset, heritage asset, what an asset might look like in that regard for this plan as opposed to what it might look like for others.
Thank you, Bill. Through the chair, we have actually a recommendation which is dedicated to that particular activity. Is it okay if we defer your question to that? Yeah? Thank you.
Monty?
Just prior to following on from Roger and Lou, I was when I was reading this, I was thinking along similar lines that it was notable how much Ahuaki is already having to respond to changes that are coming at us. And it was a real feeling you had. And so it started raising a question for me. If Ahuaki is going to be your overarching strategic planning document, going forward, how does that maintain its status as the leader of what we're trying to do rather than a follower? Because right at the moment, you kind of almost feel like it could just slip into following, keeping up with what's happening. It's probably not a discussion for today, and I agree with your general language, but with your further iterations and for how us as Waipa think about Ahuaki, if you want this to do what it's meant to do, it has to stay as that leading document that's always setting out the community's aspirations and trying to guide everything. And now I think that's going to be challenging, right? Because already in the last year, it is having to flex and respond all over the place. So that's not a question, it's just a comment. And it'll be interesting to see how this kind of develops going forward to maintain. Otherwise, it won't do what it's trying to do.
Can I come back with it? And I think what we're talking, and it's really focusing on that comment, provide greater certainty. And that's if it's going to be a lead document, then it's not got to be greater certainty. It, as much as possible, has got to be the certainty of the growth strategy that actually leads all of the other documents that underpin that. And I think it's particularly that clause that I'm just questioning. But I can understand intentionally that you've left it as, I'm not going to say vague, but as broad as you can within that document because of the challenges that are being faced.
Thank you. Yep. Just to respond to, not question, but to your comment, I think this is a draft plan and it is a plan on itself. There is a lot in the implementation and how we operationalize it as well. And I think through the operationalization, there is a way to champion Ahuaki in sub-regional discussions and to provide actually for a united voice on what we're looking to deliver for our communities. So I think the role of Ahuaki is really so that we have a document where we have consistency and agreement on what we want to deliver. Yeah, and because those discussions tend to happen at the sub-regional level. And how do you mention, Lou, there is the regional spatial strategy, which is going to come in the next few years. And I think having a document like this is actually providing some a level of certainty of what we want for the district. Without this, we probably will go silent and not silent, but we will be probably more, probably less advocacy for the district itself, if that makes sense, sorry. Yeah. So it's not to respond straight away, but I think there is a lot to be done with the operationalization. And I think through that second stage of a project, it will champion how we actually use Ahuaki and use the implementation plan as a guiding document. Yeah, sorry, poor Emily.
Yeah, interesting discussion, Claire.
Yeah, it is a good discussion, really. I mean, I'm pretty comfortable with the approach because what I see Ahuaki is taking a broader view than simply like the growth strategy or any of the other planning documents that we have. In a way, what it does, it kind of sort of, puts a fence around it all and helps them all align. So they're all pointing the right, I suppose, in the same direction and that. And they are autonomous on their own. Now they're independent on their own, but they have interlinks. And this is a way that we just corral them together and make sure that, there's consistency there. There's no sort of conflicts or things that are, going to be working against each other. And I don't have a problem with the Ahuaki renewal cycle or review cycle being 5 years. It might be out of sync with the others. You wouldn't expect them all to happen, simultaneously. You can't, because there's a huge amount of work and resourcing that goes into it. Yeah, but I do think it's a great approach. It's a necessary approach when we're moving into a period where we are going to have to perhaps ration investment and things, give priority one thing over another. This is a way that we have all these things on the one page and we can work out, well, what is the most critical thing that we need to concentrate on and make sure the others actually are complementing that or whatever. Yeah, so yes, I'm pretty happy with it. the approach, definitely.
Yeah, I think you put that really well, Claire, in terms of sort of corralling and putting it boundary around. Can I just go to Kirsty to respond to Claire, and I'll come back to you, Roger?
Through the chair, thank you, Claire, for those comments. Just to also highlight that as well as the formal substantive review cycle, there may be times where we do need to look at ahuaki, and changes may need to be effected in response to legislative change, in response to significant changes. So although there is a substantive comprehensive review cycle, there may also be changes in the intervening periods.
Absolutely.
Roger?
Yeah, I was just wanting to make a comment on what Claire said, and in fact, what Vanessa, what you said, and the implementation and the action. And I think that the impression or the feed that I'm getting is that we've been using ahuaki and its progress to this point as a kind of saying, well, we're not ready to get into action because ahuaki hasn't been there. And I think our community is wanting us to put implementation in, to put actions into place, because there are a number of things that have actually been sidelined until this document goes forward. And I think what does concern me a wee bit, and it's part and parcel of that, intentional initiative, but when you read through the implementation, there are so many other strategies that are mentioned that have got to be developed as part of ahuaki. And I just wonder whether that's a process that is again going to say, oh, we're going to talk about things and discuss things and develop strategies rather than actually get out and do things. And a prime example, with deference to Mayor Susan, is Cambridge Connections. You know, it's a year since we had that Cambridge Connections public meeting, and nothing's happened. And are we concentrating too much on strategies and not getting out and doing things?
Kirsty,
And
I
that's
think.
a general question. I understand that.
Yeah.
But
Kirsty, can I ask you to answer that?
Through the chair. So look, I think, when I joined this organisation in 2019, we had a whole lot of strategies that none of us referred to. And, one of the key drivers for ahuaki was bringing everything together so that we provided purposeful leadership for our communities, working with our communities. I don't think it's fair to say that nothing's been happening whilst we've been developing ahuaki. We've highlighted that, ahuaki has helped to provide prioritisation principles to guide the development of our long-term plan and the work streams, projects, initiatives that you see that are being shaped up for inclusion in the 25-34 draft long-term plan. It's also helping to already shape strategies that are underway. An example being the economic wellbeing strategy, the climate change strategy that you haven't yet seen. Some of you sit on the subcommittee, but that is coming to a workshop. You've seen a very initial iteration, but what it's also meaning is that because such comprehensive engagement has been undertaken not only with our communities, but also our partners and stakeholders, we've got very clear direction that actually means those things, the strategy together with implementation plans, can actually be pulled together effectively, efficiently, responsively. In terms of Cambridge Connections, that has not been impacted by the work underway in developing ahuaki. I really just want to be clear on that. There are other things at play there. So thank you for your feedback. We have wanted to, there have been delays with this project. It doesn't mean other things have stopped. In fact, actually, as it's turned out, it's all been very, very effective. There has been alignment, there has been direction that's been able to be provided through the development of other planning and projects. Thank you.
Yeah, great summary there, Kirsty. Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Susan. Yes, so look, a plan is about outcomes for sure, but a plan like ahuaki is also about making consistent decisions when unforeseen things happen. It gives you a guidance and a framework to react in a consistent way. And so I wouldn't be too concerned about having something, the outcome set in concrete. Things happen. That's life. And, it's not something new either. Lord Wellington in his Peninsular campaigns made his plans with ropes so that when one broke, he could tie it together again and carry on. And, that's what plans are about.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Liz? It was always going to be a difficult one, Ahuaki, when we launched this community consultation and I guess a bigger plan. I want to really just try and dumb down this for our communities, because I think that somewhere along the way we may just have lost them. And I think Monty's comments as well as Roger's may have, I feel like we're just losing the community a little bit, just at the tail end now. So a lot of comments to me lately have been that Ahuaki is starting to turn into a plan for more plans. So let's unpick that. Let's help the community understand what the end goal here is. And I think you summed it up beautifully, Kirsty, as well. So I think it's somehow connecting those words back into our community and helping them understand the long-term vision. Sometimes you kind of lose it along the journey. So somehow it'd be really great to do that. The cost of this plan as well is starting to get a little high. There's some concerns out there. So we need to, again, just settle our community down and help them understand the long-term vision. So Steph, I appreciate this isn't an easy thing to do, but I just feel like we're losing a few people at the tail end. So I hope that makes sense.
Oh, it was a great conversation, and why I'm here today, just to listen to this conversation to get up to speed. And so I just want to acknowledge the project team firstly, and totally hear that. I think the conversation's really rich, and as you're going towards something that's longer term, really important to keep people on the journey. I guess one of the things that I've been talking to Kirsty about too is saying we're actually doing a lot of the stuff in practical terms across the organisation all the time. If I think about the Papatokohi playground opening last weekend, the weekend before last, is a great example of where something that's about awesome placemaking and community and family is underpinning the next development around that growth cell. And yet we're not reporting it as something that's aligned with Ahuaki. So I think it's as much as how we're communicating the practical as well as why the need for strategies, and to Andrew's point about how they maintain cohesion over time and in the face of a changing context. The other thing that I would say, having still feeling like I'm relatively new here, is, don't underestimate the things like your Hautapu growth cell. So you look at APL, you look at the industries that are coming here that knock on Susan's door to say, we'd like to come to Cambridge because you've got this worked out, you've got your infrastructure planning done. We know that there are houses being unlocked. Our staff feel good about coming here. We know we can recruit from the Waikato employment, the labour force. So I think one of the things that we could aim to do is communicate how those stack up against the broader vision as well, and align that so we can start to see the pieces of the jigsaw coming together. But I would certainly, I totally agree, we've got to keep the community on the journey and keep talking about what we're doing and why we're doing it. I also want to reiterate that if after community consultation, the council makes a decision to go with Waikato Waters Done Well, and we are one of the first 3 councils, for example, in that business, having Ahuaki to guide us as we go through the formation of that is not to be underestimated. And as much as it needs to be flexible and adaptable and not set in stone, it is going to be a really, really helpful mechanism as a placemaking directive for that Waters CCO. So I think it's got some huge strength, and I encourage you not to underestimate or undervalue what you've done. It's as we know, it's a national leading spatial plan, and it's got huge value. So I certainly hear that message, Liz, and I can see Kirsty and Vanessa nodding. So we've got some good things to take away from this.
Thank you for all those comments. And I do agree with trying to use Ahuaki as a reporting tool for the committee and for them to actually see how we operate and how we deliver services, again, some tangible outcomes. And I would refer to recommendation 6 later on in the discussion on those particular points as well. Okay. Good. Moving on.
Yeah, I think we should
Yeah.
move on. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I'm just mindful of the time too. And we
Yeah,
need to
yeah.
keep them.
Yeah. Thank you very much for all this discussion. So we're going to move on to recommendation 3. I'm going actually to pass through this one, but it was particularly to address the submission who have requested for more localized planning. And this recommendation is why the submission were in the future development and housing packages. Those, the outcome of those submission are actually dealt with in a later implementation activity there. So which will be on the district plan update and concept plans 1, if that makes any sense. Yeah, fantastic. So moving on to recommendation 4, and that is directly linked to one of our previous recommendations to have Ahuaki being used as a growth management tool. During the hearings on the 27th of November, if you would recall, we had actually a couple of submitters asking for Ahuaki to provide for growth sales. And here is really to kind of respond to the submissions and just to realign the work that is expected under the growth management strategy and the update of the growth management strategy, which ultimately is a tool to provide for growth sales and non-lose supply. So moving on as well, if you're okay with this, to recommendation 5. And this is the one you outlined, Bill, earlier on the Heritage Asset Master Plan and this interdependency with the growth management aspect of Ahuaki as well. It will be further discussed later on. The implementation plan, the implementation activity as it is described as well have been actually quite well supported. The only item that submissions have pointed out is that there is a mislink between the master plan itself, or development of our activity, and the growth management strategy, or the growth management delivery of overall. So again, here, this recommendation is to address that particular link and ensuring that when we look at the update of the growth strategy, and when we look at the district plan or concept plans and the preparation of those, we also look at the Heritage Asset Master Plan, which will be developed over the next future years. Does that make sense as well? Or yeah.
Lou.
I completely agree with this, with the Heritage Master Plan. I do feel like Bill Harris across the way, that we need to add the cultural word, the word cultural, because we're talking of asset only. And I believe that there is a cultural implication in there. And having lived in this district and have generations of my family live there, I do know there's a lot of cultural important sites in this area. And just to use that, just take a raka. Okay, so that's just using it quickly, but I think that's really important.
Thanks, Lou.
So can I just note that there is a request to update the name of the activity, is that right? Yeah.
It appears so, yes.
To develop and implement a Heritage Asset Master Plan to a Heritage and Cultural Asset Master Plan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, okay. Moving on to recommendation 6, which again is a very brief recommendation, but actually links back to these the last discussion that we have we just had about using Ahuaki as a reporting document to the community, and for them to actually see this as a document which is providing tangible outcomes. So as you know, in Part D of the implementation, in Part D of the draft spatial plan, which is linking to the implementation and how we are proposing to operationalize and implement the plan itself, there is a section which outlines future work on preparing and developing some KPIs, some key performance indicators on Ahuaki. And this will be done as part of the implementation and operationalization of the draft plan. But the idea would be ultimately Ahuaki is a digital plan, and the idea would be to have a reporting page that the community will be able to access to see how we're tracking against some projects. And really to remember that Ahuaki at the end is a strategic direction document, but is also a tracking reporting tool to the community against the well-beings as well, okay? Yeah. So the recommendation here is obviously there is no changes. I just wanted to outline the section in the draft plan, which already indicated the need to prepare some KPIs and some tangible targets against which we're tracking this document against. Yeah. Recommendation 7 is really to outline the few stakeholders that wanted to be actually listed in the document and in the implementation plan here. This is particularly targeted at Transpower, which was missed as part of the stakeholders in some of the activities there. It's okay.
Lou.
Just quickly again on that, you want to integrate because we have a CCO, likelihood of a CCO, which will be one of those providers, okay? On top of that, don't forget your fire brigade and all those sort of infrastructures that we do need that will have to be involved in all of the development we're doing.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if we haven't got those facilities, they're critical in the time of emergency or anything.
Absolutely, yeah. Moving on to the to FD2, which is the update to the housing strategy and implementation plan, and any recommendation falling under that particular topic. Recommendation 8 address the gap between this particular activity and the climate change strategy and implementation plan as well. And here that was really to respond to some submission about the fact that climate change impacts are not always actually climate change adverse effects are not always actually being emitted from the transport of the agricultural industry. It's also actually come from housing, from the domestic sector as well. And this recommendation is really to kind of link the two kind of together as well, just ensuring that this is there. So if you're okay on page 36 there, and if you are happy with that recommendation, then we can just move on. Yeah.
Seems to be the case, yes.
Yeah. Took a different pace here, that's good. Addressing the housing needs of the aging population, we received a few submissions on that topic as well. Asking for Ahuaki to be a little bit more committed to areas to be provided for retirement homes or villages. Again, there is currently a work that is planned under the Future Proof program as one of the key priorities in their implementation plan, looking at the retirement sector and needs within the district as well. So this recommendation is really to acknowledge that that work and the outcomes that will come actually from it, and looking at how it will actually, it might influence the growth management within the district as well. So a very straightforward amendment to this particular activity. And if we are on page 11 of the document and 37 of the agenda. Yeah.
Roger, I think you want to say something.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm probably of the age that should respond to this, really. But there's only, I think the principle of this is correct and absolute, but I'd actually just question the use of the word retirement.
Mhm.
Because today, what's retirement? You know, people are working to all ages, and it's more of a seniors position in the community that we're talking about rather than those that are retired. Because a lot of the challenges that are presented to those that are of a third age or of senior age are common amongst those that are working as well as those that are retired. So I just think a wider term to capture, if you like, that third age of community.
Yeah. Great, great observation there, Roger. I was talking to a number of times. I've spoken to people recently, and I say, "How's retirement going for you?" And they say, "I've never been busier." So to your point, right? Retirement isn't sort of perhaps what it has been seen in the past. So if there can be a small amendment, I guess, to reflect that, that would be helpful. Thank you. Claire.
I'm just responding to that and the fact that what the action involved here is that it identifies the challenge of integrating those assets into the urban fabric, especially, you know, we're expecting the number of people seeking senior living, is going to decline. And then we want to repurpose those units into something that's going to meet the needs of younger families. Yeah. I'm sort of saying that might be addressed through a district plan change when those assets are being built now. I don't really feel it addresses the need very well, that really we should be coming up with an approach that can, I suppose, catch that wave of you know, those retirement villages being built now, so that they are going to be future proofed. Yeah. There must be some work going on nationally on it, I'd imagine. Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Yeah, those are great points, Claire, that you raise. And I was thinking that reading that as well, that the district plan, it's well covered there, but it might only be one tool. But I think it is more about thinking about future demographics, modelling, and there might be a broader suite of tools. I think the district plan is an important one, but there might be some other tools that we could use as well. And to that point, Vanessa, I just wondered whether it's kind of also thinking about integration of these assets into the urban fabric. So we're talking about challenges faced in catering to an ageing population and land availability and affordability. So we start to talk about the hard assets, but we also know that there's some really important social fabric issues such as loneliness and disconnection. And so it's about ensuring that there's community integration as much as asset integration and urban fabric. I think we're all headed we were trying to say the same thing probably, but whether we just broaden that out and put a more people focus around it, because I think some of those social cohesion issues are really important. And also different cultures have different ways of providing for their elderly. And I think that's something we have to be really mindful as the younger demographic comes through. We're attracting more of a workforce age here to the Waikato because of the growth opportunities, etc. But then to Claire's point about repurposing those assets within decades, not in the distant future, but within decades as the demography of New Zealand changes. So does that make sense? Is it helpful? Through the chair, thank you for your very helpful feedback, Steph. I think, what we heard from the community was really about people at the heart and about creating that connectivity and not having pockets of, you know, retirement living isolated from the remainder of the community. So perhaps we can revisit the wording to see how we can strengthen that.
I think,
Thank you.
yeah, from the retirement village and the senior living and that community integration. So that community integration point is actually spoke to in the plan itself. It's probably, there's probably a gap in the implementation plan when we refer to what type of outcomes could come with this. But that is something that we heard a lot during the work cafe, during the different events, to minimize gated communities and to have them actually to be well integrated within the urban and village fabric, to actually create those intergenerational spaces as well. Yeah.
And we know that some of iwi partners, right, are already iwi mana whenua partners are already looking at that and creating new ways of living together, which is awesome opportunities for the community. Philip.
Yeah, thank you. Morning. Yeah, we're just talking about as the population grows and we have more and more retirement homes, a big focus on public transport, accessibility, and Kirsty just mentioned isolation. So we're building a great network of walking and cycling tracks, but public transport for our Pacific towns, not just the cities out to Hamilton and things like that. So that's a big focus too.
Yeah. Thank you very much for all those comments and suggestions for change. But something that we can definitely do here. Moving on, if that's okay, to FD3, which is the district plan update and content plan development, monitoring and reporting. Here in recommendation 10, we are focusing on the submissions. We have called for more localized planning, as I mentioned earlier, during the growth strategy section. Those submissions were really looking at the opportunities which are now actually created following the confirmation of Southern Links and the Cambridge to Pierere road projects as roads of national significance, and the fast-paced changes are expected to happen in the land use around or adjacent to those two project corridors. So for this particular recommendation, we have recommended for a new sub-activity to be added within this implementation activity, and which looks at developing concept plan for Ohopo Rukuia, and also noting that one will be provided for under the Karapiro package program as well. So this is on page 37 of your agenda, page 11 of the appendix. And as I said, this is about a sub-activity for Ohopo and Rukuia village concept plan within the 1 to 3 years timeframe, because obviously we're looking at a land use of change to happen in the really short term planning horizon.
Just through the chair, you'll recall that when we heard from submitters through the hearings that there was, you know, the work that we'd undertaken with Nahunapori village and the concept plan, and had been cited as something to be explored in this area. So really building on that with community input right from the get-go. Yeah, help.
Yeah, good stuff. Lots of nodding around the table. So that certainly receives a seal of approval.
Fantastic. So moving on to recommendation 11. So this is exactly this. Thank you, Kirsty, for the transition. This is regarding the readiness and preparedness of some of our community leaders and community developers who actually come to the table with some concept plans, some private concept plan, would tend to be at times supported by the committee. So this is something that obviously the growth and planning team already are doing when they have developers pre-meeting applications. But this was probably a wording and the theme that was lacking from the implementation plan. So this is really to kind of readdress the way that we work with our developers in a collaborative way, especially when they come actually with substantive work that is supported by some members of the communities, and to kind of try to really bounce back on those projects as well. So again, slight wording on that, but it's really about making sure that this is addressed in the implementation plan.
Lou,
Yeah, thank you. Very much agree with this. It's good. The one thing I think you missed out of there is cultural, the word cultural. So when you're talking of the strategy, all right, you adopt a collaborative and cultural, okay, because that is a separate issue altogether, all right? And we need to have that when you're developing these infrastructures.
There's a separate one from Maureen.
Cool. Thank you.
Roger?
Yeah, thanks through you, Madam Chair. My understanding of this is that that actually is happening currently. And so this is just an endorsement of saying it is happening, but it is important that it does occur when we look at those private-based plans. So it's not this is not a change, but it's just an endorsement of what is currently happening.
That's right.
Am I understanding correct?
Yeah. So when they are pre-application for private structure planner, this is something that the growth and planning team will actually discuss. What we know is that there are more and more preparedness within some developers, and that is really to reiterate the fact that we need to have a more collaborative approach with those particular projects. Yeah.
So that suggests that it is a change because you're saying a more collaborative approach. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Claire?
Yes, I just wanted to respond to Councillor Brown's suggestion, because the collaborative and cultural, because if you're asking for a change, I don't feel it's necessary, because we've got a separate section that talks about Māori design, and there's in the urban design section. I mean, I'm sure you're very familiar with, yeah. So if you feel that that's sufficient to provide that cultural lens to any sort of designs or new developments, I'm happy with it, the wording staying as it is in this particular instance under number 11.
Claire, can I just talk to that, please, Vanessa? Claire, I think there's some different scale of engagement and collaboration that's required. So I would expect to see iwi mana whenua explicitly stated in this, because there's the points at which you are talking about placemaking strategy, design on a broader scale, and that comes from a partnership-based approach and understanding, for example, not our treaty obligations, not only our treaty obligations, but what responsibilities we have through partnerships, through te whakahono agreements, through things like te ture whaimana and co-management arrangements, and the support we have for housing strategies and economic development strategies that iwi might have. When you get down to individual place and design strategies and design work, that's very place-based and very specific. Whereas I think for me, if I'm reading this right, and Vanessa, tell me if I'm not, that this is about a broader level of commitment in terms of when you're instigating that work and working that through with developers, etc. But as we know, it's well tested, iwi aren't iwi need to be stated explicitly in there, I think, and those commitments, particularly to those in legislation, but in partnerships, should be well canvassed, I think.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steph. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I have been involved in a number of the concept plan processes for, some of the communities and villages. Yeah, and mana whenua and iwi have actually had pretty prominent roles in them. I feel that is catered really well. Yeah. I just felt that this point, adding cultural into it, I felt was, yeah, I wondered if that was too specific, that we're talking about a broader, that this is sort of that high level approach, and accepting, I certainly take it for granted that when we talk about partners, that's definitely iwi and mana whenua, yeah. And you know, like those concept planned approaches that we used, I thought that they really did cater well for input from those groups.
So through the chair, absolutely, Councillor Clare, if we think about Cambridge Village concept or town concept plan refresh, we developed that in partnership with mana whenua. You may recall that when it was presented at this table, Hinarangi spoke in that partnership role, and similarly with Pirongia. So we can look at the wording to make specific reference to our mana whenua and iwi partners. Yeah, thank you.
Would that be satisfying to have actually a range of mana whenua iwi partners, stakeholders, and community being added in? Noting, as you mentioned, Claire, that there is a placemaking aspect within Ahuake as well. So there is, which is really about the guidelines when actually producing or delivering those projects. Here is very much about the process. How do we actually enter the collaborative aspect with those partners, those stakeholders, and the wider community, and how we approach those co-designing principles as well. Yeah. Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah, kia ora, Susan. And Claire, I take your point, but I guess that adding that in there, the piece that challenges me in the amendment is the part that talks about ownership. And by having that cultural perspective to it, we get away with the ownership being the only consideration, or one of the only considerations here, because for us it'd be kaitiaki as opposed to ownership. We don't own the land, we are the land, part of the land. So that's, yeah, I'm pleased that there's that change, and thanks for that support.
Kia ora, Bill.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. That's definitely something that we could actually add as well in the rewording. Moving on to the review of the Free Waters Master Plan, which is FD4. This particular recommendation is to address submissions looking at the area that was targeted for in the plan, looking at the 2035 to the 2050 level of services. So this is a really slight changes to the wording to expand the targeted area and actually include the Hamilton Airport as well within there. So it was probably more an omission than a significant change here. Okay, with that. Then moving on to FD5, which is the development and implementation of the Heritage Asset Master Plan. Now we have agreed to rename it Heritage and Cultural Asset Master Plan. And again, no changes here. The activity description on itself was supported by most submission. Just a point here to say it's recommendation 13 and not 18. Okay. I think I will move quite quickly through the stage approach for this particular package. There is no changes here. So going on to page 40 of the agenda, which is page 14 of the appendix. We already know that activities FD2, which is the housing strategy, FD3, which is the district plan and concept plan preparation, and FD4, which is the Free Waters Master Plan, are already ongoing activities. They're not scheduled for a particular decade or time in the in the implementation timeframe, and this is because they need to respond to population changes, demographic changes, but also to regulative changes. The only one to discuss here is really about FD5, which is currently scheduled for the medium term, 3 to 10 years. There were a few submission concern that the delay in delivering this activity could impair the significance of the items listed into this master plan when looking at growth management. And what we did here is recognizing council financials limitation. We haven't actually brought this activity forward. We left it at a medium term, 3 to 10 years, but linked actually back the interdependency with a growth strategy. So ensuring that when the growth strategy will be actually updated, there is a glance at really creating or reviewing what could be in those in the asset, the heritage and cultural asset master plan.
Claire.
Yeah, so I just raised a point with you before the meeting because we had quite an eloquent submission from, I think, Te Kopa King, whose mana whenua group is in that area affected by the Southern Links development in North Waipa. And so I was just worried that their concerns, that their interests wouldn't be able to be protected and upheld if large-scale development proceeds at pace, because, you know, they're not at the moment recorded in any of our record, I suppose, whether it's cultural or heritage records. So could you give me an assurance that by linking it with that growth strategy review that people like Te Kopa are actually not going to be disadvantaged? We know that this development is going to go ahead, but we are still going to keep the timing of that heritage and cultural asset master planning, to be further out. So how can we be sure that their needs are actually going to be taken up, you know, that they're not actually going to be disadvantaged through this?
So I appreciate the concern, and I think it's a really good point to be raised. There is a few things to kind of be outlined under that to respond to your concern. One, the development of FD5, the Heritage Master Plan, will be really for us to understand where our heritage and cultural assets are within the district. Right now, we don't really have an inventory, if you like, of what we need to actually protect beyond what is actually listed in the district plan and scheduled within the district plan itself. So this is really a document that would actually allow us to better maintain, better access, better understand those different heritage and cultural assets. But they are or not listed in the district plan. They could be actually listed in that particular document. Now, it doesn't make that document statutory. So it's really something to be thinking about. It's more an operative document than it's not. It could legitimize discussions for sure, but it wouldn't have a statutory status on it. Now, regarding your concern with this particular submissions, there are processes in place, and I might actually go back to you, Ben, because working on the fast track applications, there are already some processes in place to acknowledge and to manage those particular sites.
Thanks, Vanessa. And just to respond to the point, the Fast Track Approvals Act does have some specific consultation requirements, which are quite explicit and raises expectation that developer proponents will be working with iwi and mana whenua.
Thank you through the chair. Just to note that with regard to Southern Links, that project, that NZTA are engaging with Mana Whenua and iwi, and we have been able to provide feedback as to the groups in Waipa that there ought to be engagement with, including na iwi tōpua Waipa and specific hapu and marae. We have also had direct contact with Te Kupa and his whānau through attendance at na iwi tōpua Waipa meetings, but then follow-up communications directly with Wendy Robinson and myself. So, and just also to mention, you're aware that Tiffany Wilson is leading a piece of work to progress a partnership framework for us. And as part of that work, we are also looking to engage with Te Kupa and whānau. So yeah, I think clear that we are looking to address the concerns that you've raised. Kia ora.
Thanks, Kirsty. Bill?
Yeah, thanks, Susan. I just, acknowledge the council in terms of its participation in the water project, and we were pace setters in that regard, and the fact that we used the Matariki principles, and we collectively did those with in partnership with Karaiki Kahukura, and we've got a precedence. We've got a very good precedence in terms of principles that have been adopted here by this council. Whether we need to continue to produce other packages of that nature when there is a very good one that already exists and has already been trialled and has already been found to be successful here in the Waipa. And I just, I think it's always worth reminding ourselves of, that was good work. That was good partnership work that was done by this council. So kia ora for that.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for that acknowledgement. Cool.
Thank you. Thank you all. This is a time to actually move on from this package of work. So it's closing actually the future development and housing package and moving on to the placemaking one, if that's okay with everyone. Just to reiterate that the activities under the placemaking package included P1, develop the placemaking strategy and implementation plan, P2, review urban design guidelines, and 3, develop Te Ao Maori design principles as well. This package was overall well supported. Zoe, if you want to actually go to page 18 of the agenda to show the quick summary on that and the different kind of sentiment. So overall well supported with 81% of people supporting the outcome or at least the intent of the package. And you can see a bit of a shift when it comes about the stage approach. So again, very much supporting what we're intending to do, but just wanting for this to happen actually faster. And most submissions we were targeted at this package actually thought that was something that council was already doing in many occurrences as well. So I suppose the level of support was probably more from a surprise of, we're not doing this right now. We are. It's just that this is kind of lining up and ensuring that we have a strategic framework that goes when we look at placemaking and when we look at the type of placemaking that we're doing as well. And that is what P2 and P3 speak to. So 4 recommendations made under this particular package and only one seeking some amendment on the draft implementation plan. So jumping onto page 42 of the agenda, well, actually, we're going to go on to page 44, which is straight away into the recommendations. So as I said, overall support for P1, which is the placemaking strategy. So no recommendations on that to be changed. Sorry, that's 43, Zoe. My apologies. And then if that's okay, moving on to P2, which is the urban design guidelines. Again, level of support for the activity descriptions, and then leading on to P3, which is the develop the Te Ao Māori design principle. And there is a slight changes in the description here, which is to ensure that we have the involvement of a iwi Māori urban designer, artist, historian, or kaumatua to attend to the process of those design principles being developed. And that is coming through a couple of submissions. And also when we had actually a hui with Waikato Tainui, that was actually something that had been noted too. So the recommendation is just for this slight specification on involving a iwi expert. Yeah. Oh. Happy with, yep.
Appears to be no opposition to that.
Fantastic, thank you so much. I think when it comes about the placemaking package as well, stage approach, very, as I said, the level of position was really to ensure that this was done at pace. But again, we need to kind of prioritize what needs to be done within the short term and medium terms. So the recommendation was to not change the scheduling of this particular activity as well. Yeah, thank you. If that's okay, we're closing the placemaking package discussion, moving on to the strategic framework, package, which included the following activities: T1, review of a transport strategy, the EC1, which is the development of the economic well-being strategy and implementation plan, the NV1, which is the review of the environmental strategy and implementation plan, and CC1, develop a climate change strategy and implementation plan as well. Overall, thanks, Zoe. Overall, in support of a description of the activity, here, most submissions were actually focusing on the transport strategy and the environmental strategy as well. Many emphasizing as the summary mentioned, the need for more transport options, and going back to your comment, Philip, to look at connecting areas where there are more transport disadvantaged groups as well. So in this package, we made 10 recommendations, 6 of them seeking amendment to the draft plan. So moving on to page 45 of the agenda. Well, actually, we're going to move to page 48, my apologies. Page 48 of the agenda, and looking at the first recommendation, which is probably a brief one, where the LEF infrastructure providers such as Transpower and the Ministry of Education wanted to be listed as key stakeholders. So that is the initial recommendation. And I suppose that's fine. We can move into recommendation 2. And this recommendation is really a rewording and a slight addition to the initial content of the transport activity in this package. And this is really following on, as we said, the last 6 months of changes in the status of 2 of our strategic corridor, Sovereign Links and the Cambridge to Piarere, and the need for infrastructure planning around those particular corridor. So on page 49 of the agenda, 23 of the appendix, the slight amendment recommended is to really relink the update of a transport strategy to the work which is being currently undergone by Future-Proof, to also look at the extent of the investigation of public transport within the district. And here was an omission targeting at the servicing around the airport as well. And that is something which is actually have been noted within the implementation plan of the future proof as well. So maybe a slight rewording, making actually the activity description a little bit more clear, and relinking with the future proof work stream as well. Yeah.
Roger.
Yeah, thank you very much through you, Madam Chair. And I'm just wondering, in terms of the reference to public transport and the fact that as of July the 1st this year, then the funding of public transport will be clearly in regional council coffers, and they will be directly rating for public transport instead of it going through our systems and our control. I wonder if there's a need to recognise that that's going to be a change in environment, and how that will influence what we can do in terms of the provision of public transport within our Waipa district.
Thank you,
And that's
Roger.
not just being confirmed last Friday, because we weren't even sure of that up until then.
Absolutely. I wonder, Brian, if you want to jump in on this one? Or discuss the update of a description. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the way it's funded will it will not detract from the task that council has as an organisation to have transport strategies, to still be doing transport planning around where public transport should be, and providing that input into the regional council and our future-proof partners. So I think as the district, the region grows, yeah, what we're finding is that Waipa District Council staff and councillors around the table with the transport planning committees and things is having more of a say, and is having more regular contact and cooperation with the regional council in that whole public transport planning space. So yeah, I don't see that the funding change should diminish our role. If anything, over time, it will strengthen.
Appreciate your reflections on that one, Brian. Bill.
Having a lot to say here today. But I come back to what Mike said earlier on about this being, you know, a strategic document going forward. And I wonder by the last sentence there whether we're actually accepting that all, you know, the tertiary education will predominantly come out of Hamilton. That's something I do wonder about, because I just think that if we're actually looking at strategic growth for ourselves here in the Waipa, then shouldn't we be looking at Waipa tertiary education and building that so that we're not transporting our rangatahi, our youth into the Hamilton area? We've got a very good wānanga here.
Philip.
Yeah, so thank you. And thanks, Brian, for those comments too. I mean, collectively, we've got to recognise the importance of public transport for our older members of the community, and they're the ones been crying out for it for a few years now, and it doesn't seem to be, in their eyes as well, particularly, they don't see anything happening. And, you know, our town is getting bigger and bigger than what we're even planning on, or currently planning on with our numbers and things, and with new pools and supermarkets and medical centres and everything everywhere, the town's getting bigger and bigger quicker than what we're even imagining it. So as a collective group, or even some of us as individuals, have got to really keep this, have a discussion. You said about a strong voice and things like that. So we've got to recognise that and get on with it real quick, because our town's getting busier and with cars and congestions and parking. There was a meeting on Port Street the other day about car parking and things like that. Yeah, it's really important.
So through the chair, I think just in responding to the comments that Councillor Phillip has made, I mean, that's really what's highlighting the importance of the wording within the implementation plan, the importance of that sub-regional work, collaboration with our sub-regional partners and the work streams that flow from that. So I think we're all in alignment and similarly the feedback provided by Brian.
Steph, did you want to add to that? And then I'll go to you, Liz.
Liz, do you mind if I just respond to Bill's comment? Bill, I totally hear what you're saying and tautoko your comments about the great anchor partner we have in Te Wānanga or Aotearoa. But I guess what I would like to think about and invite councillors' views about is I think the future of work is such that lifelong learning is is the thing, right? It's not about a once off now, as it did in my day, back in the day. And also, I think that there are so many different pathways for tertiary education or other on-job learning. And so I guess it's about having a range of options for a range of the community to go to a range of places, including the University of Waikato, but strongly, whether it's trade-based training or local institutes, as you say, as the wānanga. But I also think, to Philip's point, if I get up early enough and get moving, then I watch everyone jump on the bus going to Hamilton from Cambridge every morning that goes to work, and I see them running with their little lunch boxes and their work satchels. And so I suppose it's and then watching kids go to school on their bikes out to St. Peter's or wherever we're staying. So I guess it's about providing for that range of options, isn't it? And across the district, outside of the district and back in, which is what Brian's point being, is that we've got to continue to advocate for both the internal, but also that external web of connections.
Yeah, I mean, it's like every community, we're all different age groups.
Yeah.
And not everyone can or wants to cycle, and one cycling don't want to go on a bus as well to take you to the swimming pool in Cambridge, as an example. So you know, it's our older community that are crying out for more than teenagers. I haven't heard one teenager say we need a bus internally. Maybe to get into Hamilton, yes, 100%, but I'm talking about internally.
I guess going forward, it's the suite of options, isn't it? And being responsive to need. Many other smaller towns across the country are thinking about vans, smaller vans on demand, trialing a whole lot of different options. And that's what we need to understand what each demographic requires. But also we have to be mindful that some voices are louder or heard in channels in different. Some voices are heard in particular channels and other voices are heard in other channels. And we need to make sure that we're hearing all of those voices and all of the channels to provide the best we can in terms of options.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily need to be big buses. I think a lot of people realise that. But some time ago, when I was solely on the community board, when I was a community board member, and we were talking about structure plans and all sorts of stuff, I emphasised the importance of when we're designing these main corridors that they are wide enough for buses in the future, and allowing them to be able to pull over and have spots like that. So we, plan that now. Don't plan it and have to do it all again in 20 years' time when we do introduce it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Philip.
Sorry, Liz.
Liz, and then you, Roger.
Hey, look, I was just going to follow on from Roger's point because given that public transport is going to be funded through a rate through regional council, there's just I think what Roger was trying to say is that there could be the opportunity, there could be some confusion, and we have a really important role still to play with transport, but the public may think otherwise. So somehow or another, I think that was the distinction that many of our ratepayers might make is, actually transport might be now solely with regional council. That's not the case. So somehow or another, we just need to make that distinction. Roger.
Thank you. And I was just going to make a comment, and I suppose it's not really related to this, but the figures that came out from regional council shows that actually the local service within Cambridge has actually got very minimal usage. And there's a lot that we could probably do to make the community more aware that that facility exists. And particularly of the senior groups that we're talking about, they can get a B card and it costs them nothing to travel on the bus. And yet I'm not too sure that we promote that, but that's a different discussion to what's in here. Sorry.
Thanks, Roger. Yes, ultimately, we have to remember that this is a 30-year plan.
Yeah.
You know, and that there are changes at the whim of you know, the wind of the political view at the time, but this is a 30-year plan we need to keep reminding ourselves of. So thanks for that clarity, Brian. I think that was really good to hear that from you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Moving on quickly to recommendation 3, which again here is just a simple recommendation to ensure that some submissions, and particularly in this case from the New Zealand Transport Agency, submissions to, the submission was highlighting that we need to ensure that our update to the transport strategy need to reflect the land transport rule setting of speed limits 2024. Again, here recommendation is not to make any changes. We are assured that any transport related work program are actually developed within the regulatory documents at the time and updated. And again, as you mentioned, Susan, it is a 30 years plan. So that's really not about rooting ourselves in only 1 year, but look at that kind of strategic aspect of a document. And this is where a recommendation is for no additional changes on the back of that particular submission. So yeah, that's okay. Moving on to one of the topic who has been discussed at many times already. That particular recommendation is to ensure that we recognize the submissions put forward. We're looking at promoting and advocating for more transport options, specifically in area of deprivation within the district. This recommendation is really a rewording of it so that it can actually include a larger demographic, including seniors, people at low income, the younger generation who probably don't always have the finance to go through a driving license. So it's really about recognizing the transport disadvantaged group and the accessibility challenges that they are going through and what needs to be kind of looked at in the next transport strategy update. We okay with that? Slight wording again. We're closing the transport strategy description. Submissions, or at least how we addressed those submissions. We're looking into the economic development strategy now, EC1. This recommendation number 5 is really to address submission who have highlighted the change again in status for the roads of national significance. There were a few submissions kind of calling on recognizing the economic opportunities that come with that change of status. We had some discussion with Joy Mickelson, which is an economic wellbeing advisor, and we are pretty confident that the current wording and the current descriptions of the activity as it is does already explore those cluster opportunities that are actually opening up with the new status of those 2 strategic corridors. So again, recommendation here is not to change. This is really to acknowledge those submissions and ensure them that we have actually looked into those, but that the description of the economic activity as it is right now is suited and satisfy what those submissions were asked for us to address. Yep. Ooh, Roger.
Roger.
Yeah, thanks through you, Madam Chair. And totally agree with this as a section in here and the importance of the roads of national significance and the connectivity that is established by those two new roads of national significance coming into the region. But I wonder if, we feel the need within our community for, in fact, to have enhancements to that connectivity by perhaps having a northern access way coming onto the Cambridge to Piriri. Is there a way that we can incorporate that into this somehow, recognizing that that's a wish of our community and it would be an enhancement to that connectivity?
Thank you, Roger, for this particular point. I don't think this is something that we can do within this particular recommendation. What I would say is that this is possibly something that would update to the transport strategy, and the current discussion on the design of the road has been taking place. I don't know, Brian, if you want to have a comment on that particular section of C2P. Yeah.
Quick comment. So numerous times we've sort of put that case to NZTA, and even as recently as the workshop we had with them last week, where they were talking about the program and the design and everything. I guess they have resolutely said that it's not part of this project that they're building at the moment. And they don't see it as necessary for the project. But that's won't stop, I guess, council over time developing its plans or ideas and continuing to lobby if it's seen as the right solution for Cambridge. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I recall at the workshop that the gentleman who presented to us admitted that that decision was above his pay grade. And you're right, it wasn't within the work program. But he did also say that he had heard that there was considerable discussion outside of his particular part in the program that was beginning to question and discuss that northern access. And I'm just wondering whether some of that discussion and impetus should come from us, and whether this was a place for. I'm just concerned that if we allow that to progress without our voice being heard on terms of that northern access, then we lose the opportunity, because once it's built, it's built.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll just say, certainly as staff, we're keeping that northern access in front of the NZTA organisation. And I suggest as the political arm, when you're involved with NZTA, you continue to keep it in front of them as well.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Question quickly. We didn't receive any feedback to this effect through the Ahuaki process, is that right?
That's exactly what we were discussing. No, we didn't. That it is something that could have potentially been added to the priorities and places, and on the Cambridge section of that kind of northeast section within there, but yeah, ultimately it's not something that we have received or has been voiced through the submission received on that particular topic. Yeah.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much. Moving on from EC1 economic well-being strategy onto the submission addressing the environmental strategy update. So those submissions, and more particularly one that we heard on the 27th of November during the hearing, were to look at extending Taia Te Taio, the ecological corridor, which is from the Mangatatori to Mount Pirongia. As mentioned in the recommendation and in the staff comments, this particular project is not led by council. Therefore, the changes to the boundaries will be really to be done by the project owners, which is the New Zealand Land Care Trust. What we did, though, to address those concerns of furthering or extending the initiatives that are taking place within the ecological corridor is to actually add a definition of what the concept of ecological corridor is, because that is something that can be done without extending the boundaries itself. So just to, again, to address the submissions such as the Kakepuku Conservation Society, thank you, looking at trying to alleviate some of those environmental threats that they have identified in their submissions, but also from multiple individuals as well. So this is something that could be looked at, and that's really what this draft amendment looked like. Yeah, addresses. Also to pinpoint that in the strategic plan, we do refer to regional work stream as well, such as the Waikato Biodiversity Accord as well, which the council has signed to last year. Okay. You happy with the amendment?
Yep. Yeah, appears to be the case.
Fantastic, thank you. So closing this one, and we're moving to the climate change strategy, or at least the update or the development of the strategy. And this is really to circle back, so close the loop on the previous recommendation made with the housing strategy update. So nothing new here. It's again about it's on page 52 of the agenda, or 26 of the Appendix 1. Again, just linking back to the update of the housing strategy, acknowledging that carbon emissions do come from domestics as well, and also to look at investigating more sustainable practice within the housing and infrastructure provision. Yep. Moving on to the stage approach within this package. So again, as I mentioned earlier, when summarizing the submissions received, most of them were in line with how we describe the activities themselves. What was mostly on opposition was actually the timing of this particular activity being the review of the transport strategy. And I'm probably going to ask Brian to sit with me on this one at stage. We did receive a number of submissions asking for this particular activity to be brought to the short term, being the 0 to 3 years. Right now, it is scheduled at 3 to 10 years. To remind ourselves that the transport strategy was already updated in 2022. There is a cyclical review, which is done every 5 years. What the comments mentioned here is that while acknowledging all the submission, there is a timely manner to actually go about this update to the transport strategy, especially noting what the current changes what are happening within those 2 strategic corridors that we have named over and over again, Southern Links and Cambridge to Pierere. So again, I don't know if you want to add anything to this, Brian?
Only that those 2 major projects will obviously have an impact on our transport network. And as the business case or the investment case for the Southern Links project proceeds, it will also develop a bit of a network plan for how it interacts with all of the local roads and what change there might be, traffic volumes or future changes. And the same with, not so much for the Cambridge to Pierere, because that is already a very well-defined corridor, and we know we have some pretty good ideas about what effects that will have on the local network, and there's a design already a concept design largely complete for it. But the timing of those and the delivery of those plans, when we've got much more certainty around that sort of 2027 mark, would be then a more logical time to be reviewing a transport strategy. Also, we should have a second GPS from the current government, presumably, and that will give us greater certainty too about what their funding priorities are.
It's that wonderful word certainty again.
Obviously, the recommendation here is to not make a change to which we're very good.
It's great. Vanessa.
Just
Monty.
the Cambridge Connections project falls out of the transport strategy, right? That's where it came from. So by not, sorry, I haven't gone back to the T1 recommendation. Is there a case for mentioning what's happening with Cambridge Connections in there or not?
Well, certainly, in the time period before the next transport strategy review, we should have greater certainty also of what will come from the Cambridge Connections, what their key recommendations are and priorities. So that would then also feed into a revised strategy. So the timing should be about right for that.
Comfortable with that, Monty?
What does T1 actually say? The review, T1 review of the transport strategy? I won't waste your time. I'll go and look.
What I would say is that the Cambridge Connection project is named in the strategy itself, in the plan, and to be a project to look at when outcomes or when there is a conclusion to it. Yeah.
Cool.
Look, that satisfies me. I was basically checking that it was mentioned. Yeah, you're telling me it is. Good, thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks for that clarification. On that basis, I think you got a bunch of nods around the table for that one.
Thank you. Moving on from the timeframe of a transport strategy update to, and I've bundled the submission on the economic well-being strategy and the climate change strategy preparation as well. Those two activities already underway. This is not, no submissions actually were addressing the timeframes of those two particular activities as well. So recommendation not to change, of no changes there. Moving on to the environment strategy, sorry, timeframes, again, recognizing the numerous submissions who have actually come up to look at bringing this activity forward, currently being planned to the medium term for 3 to 10 years, with a submission seeking for it to actually be looked at within the 0 to 3, which is the short-term timeframes there. Again, due to capacity and resources, this is probably not a program that could be actually looked at in that short-term period. But making a note, obviously, of the changes that are happening within Council already, namely the open space strategy, which is now initiated and will be developed over the next kind of couple of years. We could address some of those concerns already. So it's saying that while the environmental strategy will still be looked at within the medium-term period, they are current projects. We are looking at addressing those similar concerns. So the recommendation is to not make a change on the scheduling of a particular activity, acknowledging the different work streams who are already looking at such concerns and keeping the environmental strategy as it is.
Again, a whole lot of nodding. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. So we're closing package 3, which was the strategic frameworks package. Yeah.
Cool. Can we have I think now's a really good time for us to potentially have a quick break, a 10-minute break. My apologies. I time got away on me, on me there. So how about we have a quick 10-minute break, 10, 15 minutes. We'll come back at 11:30 if that suits everybody well, for a bit of a wee breather. Righty ho then, welcome back. Nice quick cup of tea and back into it. Package 4, Community Places, page 55 of our agendas. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much so far for all those fantastic discussions. We're going to move into the Community Places package, so page 20 of the agenda. A quick summary on that particular package, which included the following activities: CP1, conduct a park and public facility needs assessment for future direction. CP2, review the need for multicultural funeral facilities, including Europa, which are Maori burial sites, and that is for facilitation and provision. Sentiment overall very supportive for the description of the activities, and again, similarly to other packages, some opposition as to the scheduling of those packages. Now, most submissions were targeted at CP1, which is the needs assessment for the park and public facilities. A couple of submissions were made on CP2, which were reflecting or aligning with the current description. 4 recommendations have been made in this particular package, with 1 seeking change to the draft implementation. Now, if it's okay with everyone and being conscious of time, I am going to try to focus discussions onto the main changes and point. Yeah. So for the CP1, Community Places package, when it comes about the implementation activities, as I said, most submissions aligned actually with what is proposed, and therefore there were no recommendation for the description for CP1 and CP2. If there are any questions on those, I would like to move to the stage approach of that same particular package. Yeah, good. Moving on to, yes, the stage approach. So as I mentioned earlier in the quick summary for the package of activities, most submissions were received on the topic were requesting for CP1 activity to actually be brought forward. Currently being scheduled as a medium-term activity, 3 to 10 years, and for submitters to seek for it to be brought forward. I think this is also something, the feedback highlighted here have been received throughout the different engagement events that took place during the consultation period as well. So acknowledging the significant amount of submissions, asking for this to be brought forward. This is actually what the recommendation aligns with. And for CP1 to be transferred from a medium-term planning period, timeframe, sorry, to a short-term one. Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry. Brad was here. That's fantastic. So we are going to close that particular package and moving on to the Karapiro program, if that's okay. Again, a very quick summary on the level of submissions for this particular package, which included K1, prepare a Lake Karapiro destination management plan, and K2, investigate Karapiro village connection. Again, a mixed support, sorry, so this is on page 21 of the agenda, a mixed support on the page 60 on diligent. So a mixed support for this particular package, and I suppose this is really because of a localized aspect of it. And again, and a mix support or opposition to the stage approach of this particular activities as well. You can, on page 21 of the agenda. This package mostly received submissions for activity K2, which is investigate Karapiro village connections. And most submission actually align with a prepare of a Lake Karapiro, the activity prepare Lake Karapiro destination management plan. Some of the submission questions why we had actually a targeted program for Karapiro, which has been actually explained in the district in the draft plan and the implementation plan as well. 3 recommendations have been made in this package, with one seeking amendment to the draft implementation plan. So we're now looking at page 60 of the page 60 of the agenda, and that is page 34 of the appendix. Regarding K1, as I said, submissions aligned with what's being sought in the description of the activity. So no recommendation. Well, the recommendation has been for no change here. The second activity brought actually probably a little bit more discussion, is again a focused item here today. This is regarding specifically a couple of submissions from one from the Ministry of Education and the second being from the NZTA, the New Zealand Transport Agency, looking at one of the items included in K2, the Karapiro Village Connection Project, which is looking at the relocation of the school, the Karapiro school. Now, there is additional information that has been provided to you, which are in Appendix 5, which are in page 287 of your agenda, and that includes the minutes of meetings that have been taking place between council and staff and board of trustee at the Karapiro school. And I've also actually included the drawing set, the indicative drawing set for the Cambridge to Pierre road project, which is something that you already have kind of looked at as well last week during NZTA presentation. So the staff recommendation here, following this meeting and the role, the advocacy level that council is putting forward, we have recommended that no change be made to the current description of the activity. And as I said, this is following the meeting and following actually staff opinion on what could be done here. Yeah, I think I'll leave it here, and I'm probably open for discussion at this stage and see where this goes.
So it's certainly a very complicated issue, but yes, Monty.
Yes, so on this point, given we've seen the design drawings from the Cambridge to Pierre, I did just wonder if this one is better refocused, not as sort of a investigate Karapiro village connections and Karapiro school relocation, but optimising what's being done, given it's happening over the next 5 to 7 years or whatever. It strikes me that might be sort of our most effective sort of advocacy point. Going to get a hell of a lot harder later. So I don't know that. I guess that's what you're getting at, right? But it did slightly strike me that it was, and Mike's alluded to this, that whether having such a sort of bold strategic target or sort of ambition in there was still appropriate. So,
yeah, clear.
Yeah, well, I support what's proposed. I was really disappointed to read the record of meeting with the Karapiro school reps, because they say that they haven't actually been able to participate very well in the NZTA process, which it's beyond me. They were identified really early on, and there seems to be still quite a bit of doubt for that community as to whether or not what's proposed with the interchange is actually going to work for them. And I just feel that that's not really good enough. I mean, that I don't know if we can be advocating at NZTA to, like, now's the time to tweak those design proposals to make sure it is actually going to work. I guess I'm of the view from the record that it's not very likely that the relocation is going to take place in the short term. So really, you've got to plan to be able to get access in and out there, with this construction going on. Yeah. I just think, is there anything that we can do to get that message to NZTA that they've really got to be working more proactively to resolve these issues, successfully?
Yeah, look, I agree, Claire. You may recall last week at your service delivery workshop, we had Jason Harrison, the lead director for that C2P body of work, and I had spoken to him previous to the workshop, and we touched on, I think, in our discussion about the plight of the school. And I understand, although we were told at the meeting that we had with the school, at the record of the meeting is obviously in our agenda, that they had sort of somewhat fallen off the radar in the discussions. I'm assured by Jason that they had actually met with them, just as recently as a few days prior to our workshop here. So they have reconnected. He confirmed that they were considered and classified as an affected party, but that hadn't been the understanding at our previous meeting some weeks prior. So there has been a bit more of a connection between the two, which is reassuring. Might not solve the bigger issue, but it's certainly leading towards there being a lot more engagement between NZTA and the school. So that is a little bit of good news there for them. Mike.
Through the chair. The pre-meeting, which is what Monty's alluding to, I sort of brought up that whole thing of, again, should this be in there? But I mean, I think it's a far-fetched dream personally that the schools will be relocated. But my view was more around what communities and schools don't want is uncertainty. And and to relocate this, you're going to the other side of an old state highway, which then creates uncertainty for the people on the current side of the highway, sort of thing. It's a sort of a chicken and egg thing or no-win situation. But I guess I'm happy to leave it in, because if the Karapiro Board of Trustees think it's worth leaving in there, then I guess we should be taking their lead.
Kirsty and then Philip.
So through the chair, the meeting that we had with the school representatives and ministry representatives in January, I think, was open and honest, and there were concerns raised about not only the viability of the school and the impact on it through the construction period, which, as you understand, is some lengthy timeframe, but also longer term, the disconnect from the Karapiro village. By the dam, the impacts that raises in terms of even the ability for the school to be able to undertake activities off-site. So what we walked away from that meeting was a request from the school that we help to facilitate a meeting and, with all the relevant parties at the one table, council, NZTA and MOE, as well as the school. So as staff, we thought that was definitely something that we could assist with.
The principal was very clear right from the outset that their plight can be characterised by two words: disconnection and dislocation, which is, certainly it's pretty challenging, when you think about the criticality of rural schools to our rural residents. It's a bit heartbreaking to hear that description. Philip.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, a couple of things have been brought up that I was going to bring up, but there is a new principle there. But with regards to disconnect, it's got that now. And the presentation from NZTA last week was more managing the school during construction, giving the school accessibility during construction, because it didn't, from what they showed us, it didn't look like it was impacted once the motorway is finished. it's more during construction. But the one thing they did comment on or didn't really elaborate on is there was no, in that overview, that the video, there was no mobile petrol station, but they didn't elaborate on that. But yeah, that was definitely seen. I don't know what the go is there. So.
Can I just follow
That
up?
was just a graphics thing, I think, Philip. They don't anticipate it's not there. Yeah. Monty.
Follow up with a question to Kirsty. That meeting, are they the dislocation and disconnection? Is that State Highway 1 or the dam or both? Because, and you're nodding for both, is that, yeah. Because, you know, over the years, Whitehall School over the eastern side is closed. On the western side, Maungatautari School's closed. So I'm no expert about where rural schools need to be located, but I've kind of always worried about this idea that you flick it across to Karapiro west of the river is necessarily a good thing. I don't know. But I still come back to the point when you are putting in an expressway, it's often in a, you know, you can solve the State Highway 1 connectivity issue because you've got underpasses and stuff. So, yeah, leaving this in as this really big sort of audacious strategic goal, I don't know, it slightly worries me when there might be more achievable ones, but it might be too substantial a change to make this late in the process as well. So comments on that?
I'm just going to make a comment on the bold aspiration. That is something that actually came from the committee engagement when we were in Karapiro and when we actually kind of facilitate some discussion and looked at possible resolution with the community at the time back in 2023. I'm just going to invite maybe Brian just to give a bit of an opinion on the transport aspect of this particular question, if that's okay. Yeah.
So certainly in the absence of a relocation plan, staff are working hard through the detailed design phase to make sure there is safe road frontage to the school and safe walking and cycling connections between the village and the school. So we're working hard on that and we hope to achieve that within the bounds of the C2P project. But that, I guess that would, you know, if the school remains there, it provides a road frontage and connections for local traffic and people to get there, which will work, but that won't solve the, you know, probably what will be a significant problem during the construction works where that whole area, when you look at the drawing attached in the Appendix C, is going to be a major construction site for several years.
Just on a really light-hearted comment, on my family property on Hydro Road, we've got the sheds behind the house. They're the original Karapiro school. They've got the blackboards and everything still on there now. So if he wants more schoolhouses, school buildings are there with blackboards.
Thanks, Philip. Thanks, Philip.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with its inclusion. I appreciate the sense of feeling whether it's almost an attempt to boil the ocean a little bit. But at the same time, it's a really strong message that came out of our engagement in Karapiro and has continued. And that's what we're here to do, right, is to advocate and lobby and plan according to what our communities tell us they want. And look, it's an unenviable position for that Woi school to be in. That's all I can say. So I'm comfortable with it. I'm not sure if there's anybody around the table that wants to die in a ditch over pulling it out, but that's sort of how I see it. Vanessa?
Just to add, this is not the only resolution that we place in the description of the activity. It comes with the or, which is either looking into a possible relocation or facilitating further discussion around the safety to access actually the school. So it's not an ultimatum. It's part of a proposal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful pointing that out. Thanks, Vanessa.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Moving on. We're going to look at the final implementation activity and package in the implementation plan, Appendix 1. So that last section looked at the stage approach for K1 and K2, which are the two activities in that package. And that particular recommendation look at, it's on page 62 of the agenda, looks at addressing the submissions received, looking at or have actually expressed concern as to the tangible outcomes or the cost which is actually associated with this entire package. And the fact that it is also a very localized package, I suppose other areas within the district have actually questioned a little bit its necessity. Now, we want to retain, obviously, the package as it is, but what we did here in that recommendation was to possibly put another way or to add an option on how we could, if we go to page 63, sorry, on how we could deliver that particular package. And that would be to limit the scope of both activities, bundle them up under a more umbrella project, which will be the village concept plan for Karapiro, and looking at a limited scope for both, delivering them like this, and then looking at further investigation if needs be, and in due time. Yeah. So that's really what this recommendation is. It is as an optional scope of change. Yeah. Fantastic.
Seems to land well, yes.
Thank you so much. I think we are at the conclusion of the Appendix 1 review. And again, to keep us on time, thank you, Brad. And again, to keep us on time, for regarding Appendix 2, which is really the consequential amendment, as well as some non-technical editorial recommendations. There are also changes to maps, updates to maps, and also actually added the inclusion of a dataset directory as well to accompany the maps with it.
Accompany.
Yes, that's right. Yes, so my recommendation when it comes to Appendix 2 is to actually have all accepted, but I would actually happily open the floor for further discussion or any questions or any issues that you may have on this document.
Thanks, Vanessa. Claire.
Yeah, thanks. I'm happy with what's proposed there. I just have a really basic question, actually, because Hamilton Airport is referenced quite a lot, but when we get reports from them, they call themselves Waikato Regional Airport, okay? And yeah, like, what is the correct term? If that's their correct name, then that's what it should be. Yeah. Mm.
I was going to raise that too, so you must have been reading my mind.
Thank you for that suggestion. That's not something that has come through their submissions, but if this is actually a wording change that we're looking at.
I can see
It's
why
a Hamilton
it's
International
referred to.
Airport as well, yes.
It's the common name of it, isn't it?
For follow-up, just to link in with the airport and ensure that there's consistency, whether
But
it's
their
referenced.
business name is Waikato Regional Airport.
The legal.
RAL, yeah,
Yes,
Waikato
yeah.
Regional Airport Limited, yes, but I mean, it's known as the Hamilton Airport
Yep.
on account, obviously trying to geographically align it with somewhere of considerable size and probably
makes sense.
renowned. So that makes sense. So if you can just make sure there's some alignment, we're using the correct terminology.
Yeah.
That would be great. Thank you.
you.
Any other issues people wish to raise in respect to that Appendix 2 recommendation, bundle of recommendations in there? You're all good?
Yeah, the other appendices are then the track change revised documents, in 4 and in 3 and 4, sorry, the spatial plan and then the draft implementation plan with the track changes. And obviously there will be more as we've discussed today. And then the other appendix was the supporting information in 5 for Karapedo and then the full submissions in 6. So my recommendation through the chair is that we move now to the recommendations and work through those. And I understand, Joe, that you might have worked on some amended wording just to capture some of those key points that have been fed back from elected members in the meeting. If you're able to put that up on the screen, that would be great.
Can I just be a pest? My machine has been a bit slow on it. I'm just going to, can I just raise an issue on page 74? We've described, and it's proposed wording in respect to the airport. How many airports sits in blah, 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 blah. Titanium Park is the area's business centre, capitalising on the opportunities provided by the airport. Nearby, the Mystery Creek area serves as the district's premier events location. I just wonder whether premier is probably not quite the right word. No disrespect intended to Mystery Creek, but Mighty River Domain, which we administer as reasonably premier-ish peeps. So I just don't know. I mean, they're both fabulous event locations that obviously have various, attract various groups of one of our, I think, would be, but then I thought, well, in a linguist in me says premier means number one, so it started getting all a bit silly. So I wonder if we can not just potentially single out the Mystery Creek as our premier events location. I just felt that it wasn't quite, just clanged a bit
Through the
for
chair,
me.
just
Thank you.
to confirm that we can make that change as one of, yes.
Yeah, thank you. And that was all from me. Sorry to interrupt you. Kirsty, we were heading back to, Steph,
No,
did you
I
want to say
just
something?
want to, no, I agree with you, Mayor Susan. I just reflecting on conversations we've had recently with a whole range of partners in that area, including Tiaki Golf Estate, the Field Days Association, that it's the whole area as an economic, social, cultural, environmental hub that needs and definitely needs to be master planned and well thought through, but it's all of the adjacencies there. Yeah. So it'd be great to be able to capture that, and have all expressed interest in that. Yeah.
And they certainly have a sense of feeling alignment in their own special ways. Yeah, so it is very much a hub. Yeah, yeah. Great. Okay, so those recommendations, obviously a few changes appearing on the screen behind me, and I'll just try and drive my machine to get me to the page. Now,
through the chair, also just to note that there were a number of minor typos or wording changes that have been talked about today, so that will be captured through that part F.
Fabulous. So behind me there, okay, so we've got a new or significant change to E, but obviously there are recommendations A to F. So obviously receiving Vanessa's report, notes the written submissions that were received at the 27th of November hearing, notes also the verbal submissions that were heard at the 27th of November hearing. And then D is considers and determines all the verbal and written submissions, namely today, and as referenced and summarised further in this report along with staff comments. And then E, over to the one behind me here, which is recommends that council adopts the Ahuaki draft Waipa Community Spatial Plan and draft implementation plan attached as Appendix 3, subject to the following amendments. So there are 3 amendments. Change the name of the the Heritage Asset Master Plan to Heritage and Cultural Asset Master Plan. as discussed earlier, and 2, undertake a broader approach to the wording used in the documents on addressing the housing needs of an ageing population by using terminology that references seniors rather than retirement or retirees, per Councillor Gordon's suggestions. And the 3rd one, ensuring that our iwi and mana whenua partners are specifically referenced in the sections on reinforcing council collaborative and co-design approach, as we discussed as well. So those are the 3 changes to that paragraph. And then, of course, the final paragraph in the recommendation delegates the authority to Kirsty to make minor editorial changes, which she, at the beginning of this item, owned up to there being a few, which she was happy to capture and change as she sees fit. And prior to the documents being presented to us for adoption in March. And am I right in saying it's the 27th of March that we will be?
25th.
25th, 27th, I'm trying to get my days right. I did have it written down here. Yes, so those are the recommendations. Bill, you're going to move that for us, and I'm very happy to second that with great pleasure. And there being no further discussion, I think we've thrashed out most of the bits really well. Claire, one quick thing.
Yeah, well, I totally support the motions, but I just wanted to say that it's a really exciting moment, really. And I'd like to highlight that the collaboration with iwi and mana whenua that happened during this process, I think was at a higher and closer level that I've ever been involved with before at council. So I just wanted to, I thought it was worth mentioning that. And also, you know, the innovation with the World Cafe and the participatory democracy process as well was excellent. Yeah, so congratulations to staff and also to Gary Dyatt, who actually championed it all. But yeah, no, really, really excellent. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. What she said. And also, isn't it funny how a one year project turns into 5, right? But anyway, we got there, and absolutely, you've summarised it all clear. It's definitely been a journey, but as this is not quite the day that we're going to adopt it. I do want to acknowledge the staff in respect of getting us to this point. I've got a nominated second, and I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Me. Against? Carried. Excellent. Sorry, I'm really a bit jumbled today. Well done.
And just on Claire's comment, something to add, I always remember Vanessa on the Royal Tours Community Board. I've said this before, and your smiley face there, the Whitehall Community Hall, which do great morning teas, and seeing you there, what was it, 5 or 6 years ago, was it? And your smiley face then is still going strong. So.
Yeah, well done everybody. What milestone moment. Good stuff. Well, that brings our meeting to a conclusion. Can I invite you, Bill, please, to close us with a karakia for our good work today?